And welcome to another Good Eye Podcast. I'm Jay Smack, and with me today is Nate Wise from Soar365. Now, Nate, do you call it Soar365, 365?
Good question. It is Soar365.
Cool. And I really appreciate you reaching out. I was familiar with Soar. It's a pretty high-profile nonprofit in the space in Richmond, and the mission is just amazing. It's something that pretty much everybody can relate to, but why don't you give us a little bit of history and backstory, maybe how it got started and the mission of SOAR 365?
Sure, yeah. So the organization has been around for more than 70 years now. It started in 1954 and was originally founded by families who had, loved ones with disabilities that weren't getting the, attention to their problems and their challenges that they deserved. And so they started an organization which has evolved several times over the years. At one time, not too long ago, we were still referred to as the ARC of Greater Richmond, part of a national organization called the ARC, which some of our listeners may have heard of. But a few years ago, our specific branch here in Richmond rebranded to SOAR 365, which is mostly an aspirational name, right? It simply means helping the people we serve, reach new heights and achieve, for every day of the year. That's kind of the gist of that name. And so, we serve more than 2,000 people a year at this point, which is incredible. We're based primarily in the Central Virginia area. We have several locations here in Richmond, and then a summer camp location that we'll talk about a little bit later, located in Chesterfield County. But yeah, we have many different programs and services, all directed towards, our mission, which is to create life-fulfilling opportunities for individuals with disabilities. And all that is to say that whatever, challenge that you or a loved one or someone you care about may be having, we hope to have a program or service that may be able to help them out in this area. And if we don't, then maybe we can direct you somewhere that can help you. And so we continue to strive to be best in class in everything we do, and to be here for the Central Virginia community.
Is there much crossover with other nonprofits? It seems like a cause, helping people with disabilities, that is so wide in scope and so needed that there may be a lot of crossover, not necessarily only with other organizations that help people with disabilities, but maybe with organizations that help families or single parents, somebody who just needs a hand up, but generally much crossover in general?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I'm happy to say, yeah, there is. I think it takes a lot of different forms. For other nonprofits and organizations who have similar missions to us, it could be, Virginia Friendship Circle or Sportable, or the Central Virginia Autism Society. There's all kinds of different organizations out there who serve different, niches out there that people need. And we're very proud to partner with them in a lot of different ways. And it really makes me happy as somebody who's lived in the Richmond area for about a year and a half now to see how willing everybody is to collaborate and help each other out. So that could be in the form of, appearing at each other's events. We have something called Summer Series held at our park that we have, Park 365, where this year it was Jacob's Chance one evening. Another night was Sportable. In the past, we've done Beyond Boundaries and others, right? They come out, lead activities, help us get the word out, things like that. Me as our communications and PR person, I appear at a lot of other events doing tabling, to help, get the word out about our organization, things like that. And then you alluded to other organizations that don't have a direct line to disability, maybe, but some other things that may be connected or not. I think a lot of time that comes in the form of volunteering, and we rely heavily on volunteers to help out. We have approximately 300 employees at SOAR 365, so it is not a tiny nonprofit by any means. Around 140 of those employees identify as having a disability of their own in different forms. And so, another thing we take pride in is employing people with disabilities ourselves. But Beyond that 300, there's a lot of things that community members are able to help us with. They're able to staff, different stations at events that we're having, like Summer Series. They're able to help us beautify our spaces, like Park 365 and Camp Baker, which is that campground that we own in Chesterfield. They'll do anything from mulching, weeding, painting. Whatever it is, they're happy to come out and help. And there's other organizations. There's local businesses, large corporations, anybody who's willing to get a group together or an individual who's motivated and wants to give back is definitely a huge help to us. And so, yeah, each and every one of those volunteers, all those other organizations make a huge positive impact for us here.
You mentioned quickly various forms of disabilities and how you help people with disabilities. Are there certain, this might sound kind of crass, but are there certain qualifying types of disability that you guys like to focus on, since there are so many nonprofits and organizations that help people in our communities that need it? And I'm kind of specifically looking at, say, physical and mental disabilities, developmental disabilities versus, say, emotional, or even something like people with MS. There's the MS Society,
Yeah.
who raises money for research and medicines and things like that. But I'm just curious about the space. If you concentrate on a certain space when it comes to disabilities and people needing help.
Yeah, it's really going to depend on the program or service that an individual might be interested in taking part in and receiving help from. And so this is a good time for me to kind of go into what we offer. It starts with pediatric therapy. So from birth to 36 month, we do, early childhood intervention. And then there are, speech therapies, occupational therapies, physical therapies, things like that. And from there, it goes to adult day support, which is, a space that where adults with disabilities who maybe it is a little bit more severe and they're not able to hold a job or things like that, and they need a place to go. They usually will come here and have a place to socialize, learn life skills. We can take them out into the community on day trips and things like that. And so that's an example of, where it may be a specific, severity of disability, maybe in that program. Whereas we also do a ton of work in the disability employment space. So supported employment is focusing a lot on, people who have a disability. Maybe it's autism or, another kind of developmental or intellectual disability, physical disability, like you said, but have the capability and drive to find work. And we can pair them with a job coach, a employment specialist on our staff that's going to help figure out what their interests are, where their skills may lie, and where they can be helped learn new skills, and help them try to be placed, with community partners. We have folks at, Walgreens. One of my favorites is at a local business called RVA Goats and Honey, where we have somebody who helps, clean the stalls and feed the animals and make sure their water's clean and all that kind of stuff. Um, and so those are more, individualized programs for folks, right? And then business solutions relies heavily on contracts. So whether it's federal contracts or with local municipalities, like Chesterfield County, we hire people with disabilities for that. But obviously, it's a lot of janitorial and custodial work, grounds maintenance, and landscaping. And so that requires, a certain amount of mobility and things like that, right? So, from there, it's really going to depend on each individual and how they fit into our programs and where they feel comfortable, moving within where they are on that kind of type of disability, severity of disability, things like that.
You mentioned employment,
Yeah.
and I did have a question about that. Do you strictly work with your partners to find places of employment for people with disabilities, or do you work with other employers to help them find opportunities for people? Do you follow me?
Yeah, that's a good question. If I'm hearing you right, I think the important thing to say is we are open to all types of partners for this, right? And so we want to help each individual realize basically find the right fit for them. And
Hmm.
so it's not, we have a set list of places, like I mentioned, Walgreens and others. There's not some set list of places where they have to fit into. If someone reaches out and they say, I run a small business, we're looking somebody who maybe can help us stock shelves or assemble boxes or whatever it might be. I've talked with folks who are really interested in marketing and graphic design and things like that and have the skills to do that. It takes is the right partner and the right business and organization who's willing to take them on, who has a position where they may be able to pay them a fair wage and give them a certain amount of hours work and things like that. And so we are always working with different businesses. They sometimes come and go and things like that, right? And that's part of the process. But no, I think the door is open um, for an endless amount of possibilities. It just depends on people being willing to give our folks a chance. And a lot of time, I think that they do find that these are some of the most loyal and hardworking people you're going to find. These businesses benefit from us supplying a job coach that gives them the supports they need, who is often, very often there with them, making sure that they're able to complete their tasks and are learning on the job and things like that. And so, yeah, it's a really fulfilling space, and it's a place where we as an organization are always trying to reach more people through things like your podcast, right? To let them know that this is an option, and start the dialogue from there.
Yeah, that does answer my question. I didn't know if, say, just to grab a random number, you have 30 corporate partners that you work with, that you
Mhm.
will place people in one of those 30, but it sounds like anybody who has an opportunity you're interested in working with. And I didn't know, for lack of a better description, if you had to help the prospective employer to be able to work with people with disabilities to find them the right spot, because not everybody may be open or comfortable finding those kind of opportunities until they do it, and then they find out how rewarding and how valuable it is.
100%. I think we have folks who that run businesses or are managers hired at businesses that may have some family connections to disability and understand, and others that have no exposure to it. But the thing is, our staff and support employment is wonderful. They make sure, we're not just going to throw anybody into any situation. We want to make sure that everybody is working together, understanding what accommodations and supports can be made, and making sure that the communication is consistent and clear, and making and to have that program participant, that person we're helping employ, succeed to the highest degree.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Along those lines, a couple minutes ago, you mentioned the term pediatric therapy, and it kind of
Yeah.
goes by. It's used a lot in general and on your website. Can you explain exactly what that is in relation to your mission?
Yeah, so for us, pediatric therapy is one of our fastest growing programs, and we're extremely proud of that. I think in 2024, we were right around 1,000 families and individuals served in pediatric therapy, which was a record for us, and we're consistently growing. And so basically, we have pediatric therapists, which people have heard of therapy in different forms, but these are trained professionals, experts in their field who work both at our Saunders location in Richmond, Virginia, off of Saunders Avenue, in our facility, as well as in home. And so families who, it can range anywhere from a child who was born prematurely and needs help building muscle mass in order to someday, hold their head up and walk correctly and things like that, up to children who, you may find may have something that's affecting their ability to learn and succeed in school and things like that. And so from all of these different, forms, like I mentioned, speech, occupational, physical therapies, some educational aid as well. We want to set children up in our community for success, just like any other program that we have. And so those therapists, they are experts in their field of therapy. They work with the parents and medical, staff for the family, to make sure that each child's needs are understood, and then they make it work. They help them with whatever it may be. And so many of us, in our personal lives, who may not have a physical or intellectual disability may experience therapy through, mental health therapist, right? That's kind of the most common form that we hear about, but there are all kinds of different ones, and for us, that pediatric therapy takes place in that first 36 months of life. So children are set up for success once they graduate from that program.
Um, how has the mission of Soar365 evolved over the years? And this may not be a fair question if your experience only goes back so far, but
Yeah.
how has the mission evolved as we've come to understand that there are so many different types of disabilities and, say, for a concrete example, different levels of, say, autism or something like that? How has SOAR 365 had to evolve as our understanding of disabilities has evolved?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, and it's something that I myself am learning all of the time. My background was not in nonprofit work or disability services, but rather in collegiate athletics, and it was a completely different world. But my communications and PR skills transferred, and since then I joined, like I said, about a year and a half ago. I've been able to learn so much about this, and I think people see in their everyday lives when they're exposed to it that the disability space has evolved a ton, and we have learned so much about disabilities that we never knew existed or were never given a name, like ADHD, things
Mm-hmm.
like that. Oh, my kid is hyper, I don't know how to deal with them. Well, maybe there's a way that they can be helped through therapy or a medication that's right for them or things like that. And so I think from the language, there was a time when the R word was regularly used, and that was acceptable. That's not something we use anymore, obviously. But person first language, where we put the emphasis on the person and not their disability, has become a really common practice for us and people across the disability space. But yeah, I think our mission, specifically as it pertains to our organization, has had a through line of, at the end of the day, we want to make sure that people with disabilities in our community are not being left behind, are not being left out there to navigate the world without any help. And that has, like we've talked about, taken many forms over the years. Early on, being really focused on, say, our summer camp out at Camp Baker, which I believe first began in 1956, a couple years after we started, and it's grown in a lot of ways. Some of our programs have come and gone, but at the end of the day, we're trying to keep up with meeting the needs of everyone, no matter what their individual circumstance may be, and that's difficult for any organization to do. But as you mentioned at the beginning, we don't shy away from taking on these challenges. We have a lot going on, and that's translated into a lot of different people being served every year with more than 2,000, and hopefully our organization being well known in the community because of that. And so it's my job to get the word out on that, to tell these stories, and to show that whether you know about us yet or not, you're not alone. There are services like us and or other organizations with similar missions, and we're here to help.
Speaking of stories, stories are so important in conveying the mission, having faith in what an organization is doing. Do you have any quote unquote success stories? You don't, without naming names or anything, like someone who came or their family brought them to SOAR 365 and maybe an employment success story or something?
Yeah, I have tons, and luckily we have a place where a lot of those live. I'll throw my early pitch in there for our website, soar365.org, which we'll touch on at the end, I'm sure. But yeah, we are lucky enough to be able to write a lot of feature stories, do videos, a lot of feature stories, and so a couple that come to mind that I've done recently. We recently put out one about a young man who works with our landscaping and custodial team at the Defense Supply Center of Richmond, right? So this is a military base. A lot of people call it Bellwood, where we have a team of people, mainly with disabilities, who are taking care of their grounds out there. Jacob used to work for a different organization that only supplied him, they gave him the opportunity to have a seasonal job, but he got really frustrated because he might work for 3 months if he was lucky and then was left out to dry. Getting attached to our business solutions program, which is under the Source America program, which is a national governmental contract. Um, he, first got involved with some custodial work. He realized that he preferred landscaping, and he's worked his way up. And he's a young man with autism. He is now what we call a crew leader, and he leads other people to make sure that
Cool.
the grass is cut and the military base is looking nice, and we're able to give back to our country and our community in that way. And Jacob's story is a really cool one where he was kind of lost for a minute there and has grown into a leader. Another one, even simpler, just this morning I was out at our location in the Staples Mill area, and we have a young man there named Scotty who, he liked to try cooking for himself at home, but didn't have a ton of experience. And at our location, when he came to the building one day with some muffins or something like that, they realized that he had a untapped passion for baking and cooking and things like that. And so now every other week, he leads a group of program participants. So today I went out there, they were making a 2-layer vanilla cake. And so he would say, hey, Brandon, go get me a cup of water. And hey, Anne, can you, put some oil in here? And they baked the cake and decorated it. And, they're fully capable of these things. They just need an opportunity to learn and to get that experience. And so, whether it's big or small, we have people every day learning new things, getting new experiences, and spending quality time with other people who are in similar situations or just caring staff. And it's just a really, rewarding part of working for an organization like this.
The baking, that sounds like something for Food Network,
Hmm.
get
Maybe
some,
we need to pitch a show.
yeah, yeah, get some of those folks on there. I bet they'd eat it up, literally.
Oh yeah, that'd be wonderful. Oh, that's a good one. I like that.
Sorry. Um, Here's a kind of a left field question. Do you have
Yeah.
any experiences or examples of, say, folks maybe being diagnosed with a disability or um, perhaps an event happens where they only become disabled later in life? Do you have anybody like that in your program that you're sort of a safety net almost for people who may not, maybe not born with something that they're working through, but it comes to them later in life?
Yeah, I don't have any specific examples to share, but I do know for a fact that folks who are not born with a disability, but rather may have a traumatic event in their life or are later diagnosed with something that was never, explained to them in any way, they have a place here. I think, if you have a physical disability that lands you in a position where you need some help finding a job because you were in physical labor or something like that, and you no longer can do that exact thing. Our organization and our supported employment program does help people like that. Someone who maybe has struggled with finding their place in the world, and they've been stuck at home all this time, and they realize, oh, there's a reason for this, or whatever it may be. I think everybody's experience varies. Maybe our adult day support program, or maybe during the summer, our summer camp, which by the way, it's 10 weeks and 8 weeks of that are for adults. Actually, it's not just a children's summer camp. It's a place to go and experience traditional summer camp experience, no matter what disability you may have. And so, yeah, I think that's a great point that is often not discussed, and people who are going through a really tough time. I think there's a lot of opportunity for our organization to be an aid in that space.
Cool. That's really cool. Okay, you've kind of touched and run there a couple times about the summer camp, Camp Baker. Talk about that a little bit and what you guys offer.
Yeah. So our summer camp is located in Chesterfield County off of Beach Road. It's about 22 to 24 acres of beautiful land out there. It takes place for 10 weeks every summer. As I just mentioned, eight of those weeks are actually for adults with disabilities. And so we have people who have been coming for 10, 20, 30 years, which is incredible. Um, and at the end of the day, we want to give people the traditional summer camp experience, which some either have never had the opportunity to have, or maybe experienced as a child and haven't had since. So that includes all kinds of things you would think of: paddle boarding, swimming in our pool, going to a local farm for horseback riding.
Mm.
There's the classic arts and crafts and music and drama, all kinds of different things. One of our favorites um, is every Thursday. There's a talent show where campers are able to perform. It's a lot of singing and dancing and doing different things, but it's so much fun seeing them. Everybody gets like an award at the end and things like that, which people just light up. I mean, some folks have never received a little trophy in their lives,
Mm.
and it's just a really special opportunity. But yeah, summer camp is finished for 2025, but we'll absolutely be back in 2026. So keep an eye out for information on that. We have usually between 400 and 450, say,
Wow.
campers every year. It's one of the few programs or services we have where people are able to come really from anywhere if they want, and join us, because there is both opportunities for staying just for the day or overnight. Some people will come for multiple sessions, things like that. So yeah, it's really, really special, and that's at Camp Baker.
Cool. Wow. I didn't know that many people went to it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's talk about some of the fun stuff, like the best of survey this year. And I know
Yeah.
one of your events, one of your resources got first, and one of the galas got a prize as well. Talk about those. Flex a little
Yeah,
bit.
so this is one thing that I really love, because as a public relations person, community awards and gaining recognition for the work we're doing here is really important in a way that, we're able to show our staff that what they're doing is being recognized. And so this specific thing that you're referencing is the Richmond Magazine Best and Worst of Richmond survey. We obviously stay in that best of category, of course. So yeah, our park that we own and operate off of Saunders Avenue is called Park 365. August 2025 is actually the 10th anniversary of it being open. But for the last few years, we've been able to repeat as the top playground in Richmond in that survey, which is voted on by people in our community. And that's just a great feeling. It's an accessible play space. It's free and open to the public. It's also available for paid reservations for birthday parties and events and things like that. But we're very proud of offering that to our community and how popular it is for children and their families in our community. And then one of the other events that we put on every year is called the Ladybug Fund Wine Tasting and Silent Auction. It's a long name, but it's a breezy evening that we hold every year to raise money for our programs. Traditionally, it's been specifically for children and youth programs, but I believe that will be expanding a bit in the future. But yeah, it's an evening where we have a live band, we have a silent auction, we have all kinds of different foods and wines from all over the world, and a lot of our greatest partners and donors and people who purchase tickets are able to join us for a really special kind of dress up evening here. And that won third place in the best charity fundraiser and gala category, I believe is what it was called. And so anyway, we've been lucky enough to win several awards. We, through Richmond Times Dispatch, have for 4 years straight been named a top workplace in Richmond. And all of these things just add up to show that, we're not necessarily trying to boast, but we're doing something right. And, we want to continue on that trajectory to serve the people who need it most the best way possible. And like I think I said this phrase earlier, we always say we want to be best in class. We want to be
Mm.
the best of what we do. And there's always challenges to that, but we're, continuing to follow that mission as our North Star and be the best in every area of what we do.
Yeah, man. And if, an organization like yours, if you're making the difference that you're making, you might as well boast a little bit.
I
Um,
appreciate that.
but yeah, I didn't realize until I was looking through your website that wine tasting is one word and a verb. It's a new.
We'll make it a verb. I mean, I enjoy my wine. I'm a coffee in the morning, glass of wine in the evening, maybe when I can. So yeah, that evening is always a ton of fun. And we encourage everybody to keep an eye out for, again, and it'll be coming back in 2026. It takes place in the spring each year, and we're really looking forward to that.
Nice. Well, for anybody who wants to find out how to get involved, how to volunteer, how to take advantage of your assistance and your resources, soar365.org. Anything else, any other contact info or events or anything we need to mention or put on the website?
Yeah, absolutely. So the things that we're always telling people is that, you can give back to us in a few ways and help us realize our mission. That may be spreading the word and finding, people in your life who maybe could benefit from our organization or may have a desire to get involved with our organization. Help us spread the word and tell your friends and family. Second, just like any nonprofit, financials are crucial to what we're doing and making sure that we can continue to do that, and that comes in donations, and that information can be found on soar365.org as well. And finally, volunteering. And so volunteers, as I mentioned, play a huge part in it. You don't have to have any specific experience or skills. We can find a place for you to give back and help us with what we're doing. And so those three ways are how people get involved with us. That website that we've mentioned is soar365.org. And then lastly, you can find us on several social media channels, starting with Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and LinkedIn. So whether you just want to see pictures and videos on Instagram or are more interested on that business side of things on LinkedIn, things like that, we're out there, and you can find us by searching SOAR 365 wherever you may be.
Very cool, man. I'm writing that down. That's at Soar365 on all the socials.
Yes, sir.
Cool. All right. Before we get out of here, floor's open if there's anything you'd like to mention, but I'm curious what you did in college athletics. You mentioned that quickly,
Oh,
and
yeah.
it didn't get by me.
Yeah, so I went to James Madison University in Harrisonburg, Virginia for my undergraduate. I grew up in Maryland originally, but JMU kind of stole my heart and moved out there. And yeah, it's aging me, I guess, but 2011 was when I first started college. And I always had a passion for sports, but not just playing it, the behind the scenes and the building of a successful team and a successful organization. So I majored in sport and recreation management there. And as part of that degree, we had to do a practicum and an internship, which I did with the communications department at JMU in the
Hmm.
athletics department. And so that's kind of where my love of it came. I got to do a lot of writing, a lot of statistics keeping at games, record keeping, things like that. And my love and my knowledge of it grew each year. And so, yeah, I ended up going on to what we in the business call a sports information director. That's kind of the tell all, the blanket title for what we do. Um, and so I was at JMU, UNC Charlotte, VCU, where I got my master's degree in sport leadership. So shout out to the Center for Sport Leadership at VCU. And then my longest stay was as a director of strategic communications at Radford University. So I did all kinds of stuff with different, programs. Had a lot of amazing experiences. Got to go to the NCAA tournament many, many times, both regional, national, all kinds of stuff. Just amazing, opportunities to get to build lifelong memories with folks. But that world can be difficult. It is a lot of work for
Yeah.
not a lot of pay. And so we rely heavily on people who have a passion for it. Young people who maybe don't have to pay for having a family and things like that, right? So I did it for almost 10 years. I absolutely loved it. But my incredible wife, Emily, and I made the decision to move to Richmond to kind of make a change. And I'm very grateful that SOAR 365 was the place where I landed. And we've been, kind of starting our family here in Richmond. And so that kind of college athletics part of my life will always be there. I'm lucky enough to freelance still for VCU. So if you're at a VCU basketball game, you'll probably see me down at the baseline keeping stats and things like that. Um, but yeah, I'm very happy with where I am now. So that's
Yeah.
kind of the the background on that.
Yeah, very cool. Do you have a sport of choice that you like to
Ooh.
play or watch or?
Yeah, so my favorite sport is baseball. I played baseball my entire life growing up. But oddly enough, it's my probably least favorite sport to work because there's no time limit on baseball.
Mm-hmm.
It is easily affected by weather and things like that. And so if I work, a volleyball match, I know it's going to fly by in 2 hours and it's going to be easy. But if I work a baseball game, I might sit there for 2 hours before we even start because of a thunderstorm. And then the game can go into 14 innings and that kind of thing. But yeah, baseball is my favorite sport. My favorite to work is mostly basketball, just because the atmosphere is incredible. I love the statistics part of the game, and there's so much out there. You kind of have to be an expert in everything. So I know how to keep stats for field hockey and softball and women's lacrosse and a million different things. But that's the fun of it. No 2 days are the exact same. And you get to be out at a field watching people play sports, and that's the fun of it.
So as a stats guy, do you do fantasy sports at all?
I absolutely do. In fact, my first fantasy football draft of this year was last night with some friends who still work back at Radford University. But I'm in four fantasy football leagues this year. Two my brother run. One is with my friends from Charlotte. But yeah, I do baseball, I do football, all that stuff. So it's a fun way to stay connected and have new ways to root. But I am a mostly DC sports fan, for the
Mm-hmm.
record. Shout out to the Caps, the Commanders. I do still love the Orioles because the Nationals didn't exist when I was a kid.
Yep.
But yeah. Sports are still a huge part of my life, and sometimes I'm able to squeak that in here at Soar as well.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I grew up in Northern Virginia, so I grew up an Orioles fan and a Phillies fan because I have family in Philly. But
Yeah.
I want to see the Nationals do well, and I went up to a game last week for my brother's birthday and really enjoyed it. Got to see the new stadium, but that's very cool, man.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, Nate, I appreciate you taking some time and telling us about the mission of Soar365, and I'll get this stuff, on the website as well and help spread the word a little bit. But again, thanks for your time and your engagement and your passion. You really do a great job at this, and I appreciate it.
Of course. Thanks so much for having me, and thanks to everybody for listening.
Thanks to Nate for coming by. Please do check them out at soar365.org. That's ORG. And reach out to me if you have any questions, if I can point you in the right direction on something, or if you just want to have a conversation about people doing good stuff in their community. It is j@jsmack.com, online at goodeyepodcast.com. Thank you for your time, your attention, and your intention. And till next time, this has been another Good Eye Podcast.